The war had been raging for 3 solar cycles, and the Krillian Empire had never met a species they couldn't conquer. Their armada had swept through 17 star systems, leaving nothing but ash and echoes of civilizations that once thrived. They wielded weapons that bent gravity itself, ships that phased through dimensional barriers, and soldiers engineered to feel no fear, no mercy, no hesitation. But they had never faced humanity before. And they certainly had never faced General Kale Draven. On the obsidian plains of Vareth Prime, beneath twin crimson moons, Kale stood at the edge of his command platform. The wind howled across the wasteland, carrying with it the metallic scent of approaching war. His armor was scratched and battle-worn, a patchwork testament to 100 skirmishes won against impossible odds. But it was not the armor that made the Krillians hesitate when they heard his name whispered across their comm channels. It was what stood beside him. To his left, Syrath shifted her scaled body, her wings folding and unfolding with impatient energy. The dragon cub was no larger than an earth horse, her crimson scales gleaming like polished rubies in the dying light. Smoke curled from her nostrils as she watched the horizon, waiting. The Krillians had learned to fear that smoke. It was always the last thing their soldiers saw before the flames came. To his right, Vorn sat on his haunches, massive and silent. The wolf's silver-gray fur seemed to absorb the darkness around him, his amber eyes tracking movements invisible to human sight. He was a creature of old Earth, pulled from the genetic vaults when humanity realized that their best warriors needed companions who understood the primal language of battle. Vorn understood. He always had. "They're coming," Kale said quietly, his hand resting on the pommel of his plasma blade. 5 minutes, maybe less, Syrath growled. A sound that started deep in her chest and built into something that resonated through the ground itself. Vorn's ears pricked forward, his lips pulling back to reveal teeth that could shear through Krillian battle armor like parchment. Kale smiled. It was not a kind smile. The Krillian advance force appeared on the ridge first, sleek hover tanks that moved like predatory insects, supported by columns of infantry in their distinctive black exosuits. They had the high ground. They had superior numbers. They had technology that made human weapons look like Stone Age tools, but they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that General Kale Draven fought like every other species they had conquered. "Syrath," Kale commanded, his voice cutting through the wind with absolute authority. "Mark them." The dragon cub launched herself into the air with a roar that shattered the silence of the plains. The sound was primal, furious, a declaration that carried across kilometers. The Krillian line wavered. They had heard about the human's dragon, but hearing was not the same as experiencing. Syrath's cry was not just sound. It was a challenge written into the genetic memory of every creature that had ever known fear. She banked hard, her wings catching thermals with impossible grace for something so young. Streams of dragon fire erupted from her jaws, not at the enemy, not yet, but into the sky itself, painting targets in flame and smoke. The Krillian sensors would lock onto those heat signatures, their tactical computers recalculating, their formation adjusting exactly as Kale had intended. Vorn. Hunt. The wolf was already moving before the word left Kale's lips. He disappeared into the shadows between the rocks, a ghost made of fur and fury. The Krillians wouldn't see him coming. They never did. Vorn didn't fight with brute force. He fought with patience, with timing, with the instinct of a predator that had survived 10,000 years of evolution by being smarter than everything that tried to kill him. Kale activated his wrist console, pulling up a holographic display of the battlefield. The Krillian tanks were advancing, their weapons charging. In any conventional battle, this would be the moment to fall back, to find cover, to wait for orbital support. But Kale Draven didn't fight conventional battles. 3, he counted, watching Syrath circle above. The dragon cub understood her role perfectly. Distraction, disruption, dread. The Krillians were tracking her now, their anti-air batteries swiveling upward, their infantry squads breaking formation to avoid her shadow. 2. Vorn had reached the enemy flank. Kale couldn't see him, but he could see the result. A Krillian scout suddenly went dark on his display, then another, then 3 more in rapid succession. Silent kills. Surgical strikes. The enemy's perimeter was crumbling from within, and they didn't even know it yet. 1. Kale drew his plasma blade and activated his jump pack. The thrusters ignited with a scream of superheated air, launching him directly toward the Krillian center. It was madness. It was suicide. It was exactly what they weren't expecting. Now, he roared. Syrath folded her wings and dove, a crimson meteor trailing fire and fury. Her roar split the sky, and this time the flames came with it. The dragon fire was not the crude burning of petroleum or plasma. It was something older, something that defied the neat categorizations of Krillian science. It melted through hover tanks like they were made of wax. It turned exosuits into crematoriums. Vorn erupted from the shadows behind the enemy line, a gray nightmare that moved faster than their targeting computers could track. He was among them before they could adjust, his jaws finding weak points in armor, his claws opening seams in their formations. Soldiers who had been engineered to know no fear discovered something their creators had never anticipated. Panic was not the same as fear. Panic was what happened when predators attacked from directions you couldn't defend, and Kale hit their center like a thunderbolt. His plasma blade sang as it cut through Krillian shields, his movements a blur of trained precision and battlefield instinct. He fought the way humanity had always fought, with improvisation, with audacity, with the absolute refusal to accept that the universe got to decide who won and who lost. The Krillians broke. Not all at once. Not with dignity. They broke the way a formation breaks when it realizes that its advantages mean nothing, that its superior numbers are just more targets, that the three beings attacking them, human, dragon, and wolf, fought not as separate warriors but as a single entity with 3 beating hearts and one purpose. 15 minutes later, the obsidian plains were silent again. Kale stood among the wreckage, his armor scorched and dented, his blade still humming with residual energy. Syrath landed beside him, her scales streaked with soot, her eyes bright with the thrill of victory. Vorn emerged from the shadows, his muzzle stained but his gait unhurried, satisfied. The general placed a hand on Syrath's neck, then reached down to run his fingers through Vorn's fur. Neither creature needed the gesture, but they accepted it anyway, because they understood what the Krillians never would. Humanity's strength was not in their weapons or their ships or their tactics. It was in their ability to take the wildest, most dangerous forces in the universe and make them family. Good, Cal said simply. Rest now. Tomorrow we take the fight to their flagship. Syrath rumbled in agreement. Vorn's tail gave a single approving wag, and across the galaxy, the Krillian Empire added a new designation to their intelligence files. Extreme threat. Do not engage Draven unit under any circumstances, but it was already too late. The human had commanded, the dragon and the wolf had answered, and the legend had only just begun.